personal experience in this is what my father told me. He was a second-year cadet at the Philippine Military Academy at the time that the war broke out. Only the third and fourth-year cadets of the PMA were enlisted into the regular Philippine Army. The second-year cadets and the freshmen were told to go home.
Pinababa kami lahat sa truck eh, mga bata daw kami. Nung hakakotin na ang sundalo, ikaw baba. Kaya kasama siya, Deboso. Baba kami, saan kami ngayon pupunta?
Hindi sila pinadala sa Bataan kasi I think there was a policy to preserve the youth or something. So hindi yung mga they were left behind.
They were considered either too raw or too untrained or too young.
The other ostensible reason they said was there was no firearms for these people, so it was useless. But I think the main reason was these are youngsters, this is the hope of the country, let's preserve them for the future.
So, despite the fact that they did not become official soldiers defending the country, what did they do?
The Hunters ROTC was first mustered on January 15, 1942, primarily by some of the first-year cadets of the Philippine Military Academy who were residents of San Juan.
There were 3 PMA cadets of different years. Miguel Ver was actually a member of Class 43, but he was turned back for academic reasons to Class 44. My father was Class 44, and Gustavo Ingles was Class of 45. So you had the Class of 43, 44, and 45.
And because of seniority, si Miguel Ver ang kanilang first military commander.
By PMA culture, he was immediately looked upon as the leader because he's the oldest.
Now, of course, the number of cadets in those classes was too small, so later on they opened it to their other colleagues, their friends, who were from different universities and colleges in Metro Manila and ROTC cadets.
They are all young men. They wanted to serve. They look for venues to be able to do so. They invariably end up with our people in San Juan.
We are not studying anymore. Why don't we do something for the country?
The idea was, since they were not allowed to join the rest of the USAPA, that they would form a second front in what is now Metro Manila to divert some of the attention of the enemy to themselves and thereby relieve the pressure of the Japanese on the defenders of Bataan.
By April 6 of 1942, which was just 4 months later, they had already gone up to the hills.
Punta tayo doon. Una, hindi ko alam yung doon. Hindi ako marunong Tagalog eh. Basta doon. Eh, dito kami napunta. Tuloy kami doon sa likod ng Antipolo.
The first batch was about 70 to 80 young boys with suitcases going up to the hills. But Colonel Ingles said it all when he told me, alam mo, para kaming mga bata lang. Para kami nagpipiknik lang. We were just parang having fun.
The Hunters group started with almost nothing. They had no shoes, they had no bullets, they had no gun, and so they had to find a source for it.
Nag-uusapan, how can we get arms?
Union College was the first target.
Kinuha ang Japanese yung mga arms at saka nilagay doon. Pinaka-sentro ang yung ni-raid ng mga hunters.
Ang espiya namin doon si Ingles, Gustavo Ingles. Dahil si Tavo mukhang bata eh, batang-bata talaga. Kasi karamihan sa amin, Adibosos, Bicolano, hindi natin Tagalog. Ako, Bisaya, hindi ko rin alam Tagalog. Ang marunong lang, yan si English. Yun lang ang Tagalog.
Ang ganda ng planong ginawa ni Terry dyan. Inisip ni Terry yung how to get there, how to transport them, how to avoid the Japanese sentries na nagmamarcha doon sa kalsada. Napasok nila yan.
Once they got in, they began sewing the bars.
Isang pamilya ang gumagwardya, babae at lalaki, mga anak na maliliit pa.
And the person in charge there did not want to let them get the arms. And he, in fact, he threatened to shout and tell the Japanese, look, they're going to steal our arms.
Eh, dali naman takutin.
And eventually they pacified him And so that he would not be held responsible, they said, we will tie you up and we will cover your mouth. So it seemed that he was a victim of this. And they did take the firearms out, again, very delicate operation, but this became the nucleus of the firearms of the Hunters ROTC.
Ang mga hunters na mali, ang karamihan ay batang-bata. The Japanese will doubt that he can fight. At hindi magkakaroon ng isip na iskunin yung armas. Doon nagkamali ang Japanese.
They would be going to the armories having fake documents with orders na itatransfer yung mga baril. Officer ka, present your documents, orders, transfer yung baril. O, di kakarga ng mga Hapon. And then there was one anecdote, sabi nga ni Colonel Nobales, namatay yung makina nung sasakyan nila. So yung mga Hapon pa nagtulak para umandar ulit. Filipino ingenuity yan eh. I mean, you just, andyan ang baril, use your brains. Imagine, binibigay sa iyo yung baril. That you're only able to do this because you're so sure of yourself, kaya-kaya mong gawin yan. They felt na we are in control of our country.
But they could only do so many raids and not attract the attention of the Japanese.
The Japanese already had sufficient intelligence to realize that something was going on, and they were able to follow the hunters all the way to their camp.
Mike Bear, in a very dramatic gesture, manned a machine gun to enable his comrades to escape at the cost of his life. So on that day, survivors of the Japanese raid on the hunters' camp realized the seriousness of the situation. So now, their main motivation, in addition to idealism, was revenge. And the first expression of that revenge was the ambush at Pugadlawin.
Gagante tayo. Ang mga Pilipino, lalo na mga hunter, iba ang ugali. Alam mo, there was a place, Pugadlawin kung pangalan. It's a mountain that was cut in the middle so that a road can be passed through.
Pugadlawin is in the boundary of Rizal and Laguna. It's kilometer 69. Kasi nandun ako sa tabi ng kilometrahe.
They decided that they were going to stage an ambush along that route. They stayed there for 3 days.
And it was already Terry Adiboso who was the head of the hunters.
Terry Adiboso, ano siya eh, natural born leader. I was brighter than he in the school, the academy, but in the field, no comparison.
Terry naglagay ng tao on both sides. May nakuha pa silang machine gun on that side and on this side. Ang sabi ni Terry, other signal.
So they ambushed a Japanese convoy of 200 and there were just 19 of them.
Pagdating sa isang lugar eh, nagpaputok. All 200 jacks. Walang binuhay. Walang binuhay. Blood flowed sa espalto.
In June of 1944, the Hunters ROTC decided to try to liberate some of their compatriots who had been arrested by the Japanese and imprisoned in Muntinlupa.
Muntinlupa raid is one of the nicest raids na ginawa ng Pilipino. Wala pang Amerikano. It was done because of the fact na yung kanilang mga officers, practically a lot of them were already incarcerated in the National Bilibid Prison, including Colonel Nobales.
Terry Adiboso was afraid that the Japanese might massacre the inmates of the Bilibid compound. So he had to figure out a way to rescue his comrades.
Adiboso instructed Colonel De Ocampo and yung ibang officers, mag-isip kayo ng plano paano natin kukuhanin yung mga kasamanan.
Madali-dali na yun. Kasi dalawang base namin ni-raid yung Bilibid. Yung una, raid was a failure. Ibig sabihin na failure, we were not able to penetrate. Kasi marami palang aso doon sa daan namin. Nagtao lang ang buong baryo. So we started again cultivating friendship among the guards.
They decided to do this in a very dramatic fashion. When they carried out the plan in June 1944, they did this in a very rehearsed manner.
Colonel Bicastasio told me that he dressed up as a Japanese officer. In the midnight, he banged on the gate, and the prison guards were confused, so they thought he was a Japanese officer. They opened the gates, and in went the assault team.
This time, tatlong pasok namin. Isa doon sa main gate, isa doon sa galing sa Carmona, isa galing Parañaque.
And once they got in, they threatened the guards, "You better release the prisoners." And they asked one of their friends who was in the fuse box to shut the lights off, and then the gates were opened, and the hunters who were in prison were asked to move out.
Very strategic sila na we're only going to rescue the people who we know. Kaya hindi naman talaga masusulban lahat eh. Let's be realistic.
They were very quick. They were able to get their comrades from their cell. Naning Guerrero was the one who raided the radio room, and they even disarmed the warden.
Napasok nila yung National Bilibid Prison, nakuha nila yung laman ng armory, nakuha nila lahat ng mga opisyal nila in 45 minutes.
And so it was a very, very daring raid, and they all rushed out. And when they rushed out, they were met by different groups and immediately shuttled to other places so that they could not be tracked.
So it was a successful raid. It's even celebrated in the city of Muntinlupa today.
Yung pong liberation ng College Los Baños, Laguna noong February 23, 1945. Gustavo Ingles, he was the one in charge of coordinating all the guerrilla elements.
He just came from the National Bilibid Prison.
He should have just sat out the rest of World War II after having lost his move. But it's the nature of guerrilla warfare, you keep on fighting.
He gathered the information and they were able to formulate operations plan.
What the hunters did was they couldn't do it alone, and so they linked up with other guerrilla units in the area.
There were 8 guerrilla groups involved in the Los Baños raid. Among them, President Quezon's own guerrillas, even the Hukbalahas.
The Wachi, Chinese guerrilla group, and you have other guerrilla groups who they managed to talk with, negotiate, and put up a united front against the Japanese.
Including Marquis. Was that?
They divided work who will be the blocking force, who will assault it.
Yung pong Hunters ROTC 45th Raid, siyang attacking force.
The Americans were supposed to participate in the raid by dropping paratroopers. After the paratroopers would secure the area, these amphibious landing tanks would be sent in from Laguna de Bay and brought into Los Baños. Everyone was taken out.
8 guerrilla groups voted for a unified ground commander. That was Honorio Naning kay Guerrero.
So when the day came to liberate Los Baños, the Hunters ROTC played a very key role in neutralizing the Japanese positions.
Kami po lamang ang unit na pumasok mismo sa College Laguna upang maisalba namin yung 2,147 Allied internists na naka-schedule na masakarin na ng mga Hapon.
They fought the Japanese at their morning exercises and they were shooting them, like chickens. The Americans dropped in when this was already going on.
The Americans came late because they did not have enough troops.
In effect, they just moved in, they fired the last shot, and then got the internees out on amphibians.
It was actually the largest POW rescue in World War II. It was bigger than the celebrated Cabanatuan raid.
And the Los Baños raid is a major event in stage 3 of World War II in the Philippines, the Philippine Liberation Campaign.
Binigay sa akin yung bandera at ako sige, rest the flag. O di rest the flag, dinarest ko yung bandera doon.
So you can notice something about World War II history in the Philippines. It was not a history of defeat. It was a history of victory. Of course, the Bataan Death March.
But actually, the sacrifices at Bataan and Corridor paved the way for a stronger guerrilla force around the country. Those who refused to surrender entered the resistance, creating one of the strongest underground forces throughout history. We call these guerrilla people unsurrendered because they did not surrender to the Japanese and they continued on defending us.